All right, welcome everyone to the editor group monthly meeting. It's July 8th, and let's jump right into the EM updates with our new official EM. David, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Eric. Super cool to join it for the first one, hopefully first of many. Some updates from my end. So this is across the last month there from the 1st to the 6th to the 1st to the 7th. Our say-do ratio was down slightly from the last time, 65% not counting reprioritized issues. But this looks to be mostly around just the open items that are still stemming from 14.1. So I don't think there's anything too worrying or pressing there. The really exciting one is our narrow MR rate. Say what you will about it. We absolutely killed it in the last milestone or the last month there. 14.5, but it's actually coming in across as 15.5 in the create metrics, which means we're one of the highest performing teams. So give yourself a round of applause. That's absolutely awesome. Some really impressive stuff. I think everybody's leaning into iteration really, really well, and it kind of shows. In terms of the OKR for the Q3 and the Q2, I'm currently working my way through updating the metrics left over, or the OKRs left over from Roman. So I will backfill this document probably in the next day or two. But so far, it looks like we're on track for the OKRs from the engineering side.
Cool. And we're drafting OKRs a little bit differently this for Q3, by the way, and I'll mention this in the product update, but hopefully those will be more consolidated and easier to track in a new tool that we've been piloting, and there will be a little bit less manual tracking over time over the next couple of quarters. We'll be able to link to those dashboards instead of asking you the day before, David, to go pull these numbers and update issues.
That's absolutely no problem at all. One of my issues working with Darva is to consolidate a single editor page on Sense 8 where we will have all these metrics available, and it'll be publicly accessible to the team. So you'll be just able to click in and grab all these at a snapshot. And so I'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks, and I'll drop the link as soon as we have it.
Cool. I'll move into the strategic product updates. I don't have a ton of specifics to discuss, but hopefully it will spark some Q&A. Now that we've shipped all the work in 14.0, we've talked about it a bit when we kicked off 14.1, but as we were drafting the OKRs for Q3, like I was just mentioning, I'm starting to coalesce my thoughts around helping the merge request by way of the web ID and source editor. And so that what I mean by that is the merge request experience is one of our most critical, business critical pages and experiences for almost everybody that uses GitLab. But it's also the one that we get a lot of usability feedback, where there's a lot of people interacting with many features from the merge request page. And I think the web IDE can do a better job as we improve the source editor in making this easier. And so we talked a little bit about componentizing the commit flow, and I think it's partly making committing and other types of changes like commenting on code easier to do from the web IDE. But it's also has me thinking again about the in-context editing and bringing merge request discussions into the web IDE and what we can do there. So I'm very, very interested in the possibilities in this area. I think it'll be a big focus for us in Q3. I think there's some low-hanging fruit that we could probably do, and there's some more exciting and maybe innovative work that we can do now that we have source editor powering all the editing experiences, where as we discussed, having something where we kind of progressively enhance the experience or you know, things in that nature. So the tactical plan here is I will be scheduling a sort of think big brainstorming session where I want to get all these ideas out. Again, a lot of them are in our backlog in various forms, but I want to just talk through it. We'll record that for those that can't attend, and probably have a corresponding issue to gather output from it. And then we'll turn around and start doing some problem validation and solution validation with design, and start prioritizing some work that we know we can get done. So I'm very excited to return our focus there. I think that'll be a big part of the second half of this year. Any questions on that before I jump into the content editor?
Yes, I have one. Do you think we should have a separate session where we talk about potential areas of work for WebID/source editor to have everybody on the same page, and to sort of to highlight the areas we think are beneficial for the product to work on? Or you already have some plans and ideas? Because technically, if we're talking about in-context editing, in my understanding, it's quite different from putting more time in WebID. Those two things are pretty much different. So like in-context editing is one thing, but it has nothing to do with WebID. WebID is a completely different workflow. So I'm wondering whether we will incline more towards WebID or towards the in-context editing work. And the reason I'm asking this as well is that source code is working hard on bringing the in-context editing to the repository view already now. So I assume in a couple of milestones we'll have proper in-context, like not proper, but like seamless switch between viewing files in the repository and editing the files in the repository. So that's why I'm trying to do this. And yes, yeah,
that's an important distinction, and I'm glad you asked. I think it would be beneficial to have a separate discussion on all the opportunities available in the editing realm, as far as the difference between in-context editing and opening the web IDE. I'd really like to focus this Think Big session on the MR workflow and how you create an MR, how you comment on an MR, how you might suggest code changes or review changes in the web IDE, and how we can improve that. If the conversation could naturally evolve into something where we say, you know, this isn't actually part of the web IDE, this is more part of in-context editing, and we should bring the editing experience into the MR rather than bringing the MR experience into the web IDE. I think that is open for discussion. But I think there is an opportunity to discuss more broad opportunities for the web IDE. So I think those could be 2 sessions. I'll start by scheduling this one, and I'd like to get, my original vision for this, before we just got completely bogged down with execution work, was to have these Think Big sessions at least once a month for those that can attend. So I would like to, and David and I, and Michael and I will talk about how feasible that is, and if we have, if we can support that. But I think it'd be valuable to at least pull different topics once a month. Shifting gears to the content editor, we're seeing a lot of excitement and momentum behind the MVC. So I'm really excited that it's used, it's in production and it's being used by people, and they're leaving great feedback in the issue. There's a very clear path to immediate next steps, but I'd really like to schedule a similar Think Big session to talk again and realign on the longer term vision for it in the wiki, but also as we plan to expand it to issue description editing, to being something that could be loaded from any markdown file in a repository view or something like that. So I'll get that on the books as well. That might be a little longer because I don't want to overwhelm you with Think Big sessions, but I think the immediate plan is pretty clear. We have content support that we need to get full support for GitLab flavored Markdown, and we have some initial ideas on where we want to improve the UI and UX on the editing view. of the wiki to give it a little more space and move towards sort of like a block editing experience and things like that. So we're going to be refining those issues over the coming weeks and making sure that plan is very clear. But that's going to be a big focus as well for Q3. I would like, for transparency, the draft of our product OKR, one of the key results is getting 100% support for GitLab flavored Markdown. And so I would really like to come together soon to spec out what that really means and what effort that is really going to take, how many engineers we need to put on that to make it happen in Q3. I think that would be an important goal. And I'll get back to this last topic after we stop recording, but turn it over. Any questions about the content editor before we go into open Q&A? I'm going to take that silence as a prompt for David to verbalize your question.
Super excited to see more on the content editor, by the way. So far, everything I've seen looks really, really cool. Just not really a question, just to give everybody a sort of an async update or a sync update because everybody's here. I'm in the process of building out a new issue triage process for our backlog to try and make it so that when an engineer or anybody arrives at one of our backlog issues, that it's pre-weighted, it's pre-labeled, it's essentially ready for development. It's a strategy I've done in other teams. So once I have it fleshed out in an issue, I'll open it up to the team for feedback, and we can sort of do like maybe a quarterly or a bi-quarterly review. And the goal will just be to reduce noise or complexity within those issues so that people can just pick them up and run with them if they need. But yeah, just to give you a status update on that.
I have a question. Can someone drop a link to the issue about in-context editing? I'm not sure I know fully how that relates to the other editors we have.
I don't think there is any centralized issue about that.
So what is that exactly talking about then? We have the content editor, the source editor. This is showing how much I am not involved in everything. I try to watch all the issues that go by, but there's words that people use that sometimes I don't know.
That's a bizarre thing for somebody from the editor team to name this, but we're here to help. So in-context editing is mainly involving, from what I understand for now, involving source editor. It's not for content, not the content editor, but I assume it's not going to be a problem for content editor to follow the same thing. So technically, whenever you see a content that needs to be that is potentially editable on GitLab, like blob, snippet, whatever thing that you can click button called edit and go edit this piece of content. The in-context editing effort is about making this as seamless as possible so that you do not need to reload the page, you do not lose the context, you are staying on the same page, but you just toggle the piece of content you're looking at into the editable piece of content. I've had the I've had it for snippets. There is the proof of concept somewhere around, and abandoned one that because we never had time for that. And using that approach, team has created the prototype for in-context editing of the blobs in the repository view that source code group is working on at the moment, implementing this behind the feature flag for now, but they put a lot of effort there and the result is really nice. And this is like for the repository of for in-context editing of the repository files. This is not like this is the work that source editor, source code group does at the moment. It might be not real in-context editing. It will just make switching between viewing and editing faster. And the reason for that is that in that prototype, in that effort, we are switching from generating the view of the file on the back end. We switch to generating the view of the file using the same source editor. So it's going to be source editor both for viewing and for editing the files. That's what makes it really trivial to implement the in-context editing. So we just toggle the flag on the editor.
So I think what my confusion comes from is this term, because this term doesn't appear anywhere on our team page. When I search the handbook for it, I don't find it. And when I search my mail for in context, and I subscribe to all of the editor issues, and you say that there's not an issue for it. So I guess it's the usage of this term that's confusing me and how it relates to like our actual team efforts.
Yeah, there was, maybe it was an MR. I thought it was an issue, but the one for editing snippets and that proof of concept that you had, Dennis, and that was where much of the collaboration on the concept was. And I'm not sure if that term was ever used in a title of an issue or in, it's certainly not on our direction page, but effectively it's what Dennis said, which is just making it so you don't have to transition to a specific edit page and you can open up.
So is this going to have more PM and direction around it or issues?
Yeah,
okay.
We need to refine that, but
okay.
This is a longer term opportunity and a direction we should head in, but it's not clearly defined yet.
The problem why we don't have any centralized sort of information on the team page, and most probably we won't ever have this information on the editor page because there are so many places where this might be used, and all of those places are like under responsibility of different groups. Like repository view technically is under the source code group's responsibility, right? So we cannot really say like, okay, we are implementing the in-context editing as part of our group's effort. We will just go and implement probably. If they will need this in terms of, as I said, they are in the process of doing, of putting this as close to in-context editing as possible already now. So if there will be needed some more effort, maybe we might just chime in and do help with that. But the problem is that we still don't have any sort of consolidated idea and view of how this is gonna be. As Eric mentioned, it all evolves around the proof of concept that I had for snippets long time ago. Like I think it was last year. End of summer when I came up with that, and that's pretty much where it comes from. So we have to, in order to put at least anything on our group's page, we have to have some consolidated and grounded explanation of what is going, how it's gonna work, how it's gonna be, and put some effort into providing maybe providing more proof of concepts. I don't know.
So I think maybe the takeaway from this is, because I don't know, I feel like I should have known this, but I don't really feel that bad about not knowing it given this discussion. Perhaps we should, and especially with the read-only thing said, there may be new people on this team. Eventually, people change. I've changed teams a lot. We should be more intentional about our domain language and a dictionary, ubiquitous language, like all of the terms that we want to use and want people to know, both within and without this team when we use them, have them somewhere in the handbook.
Yeah, that's a good point. We if we're going to shorthand something like that, we should have it defined. And I think we were taking a shortcut here by saying this general concept we've been talking about, which is not defined anywhere.
I was pretty sure I knew what you meant, but I'm like,
yeah,
that word, I don't see that word anywhere a lot.
Yeah, and I think it also touches on what we've discussed in previous meetings recently about how we're in an interesting place where we could be asked to implement this entirely, like we could take this further and we could just say, say we didn't own snippets, so that we're not picking on any particular group. Say there was a separate snippets group, but we maintained the source editor. If we said we're interested in making this feature, we could go and build this on top of snippets, but that's actually somebody else's implementation of source editor. So I think what would be really interesting, and what would be probably the next best step, is to sit down and define what actually needs to change in the source editor to enable groups to implement it in a way that allows them to toggle quickly between read-only mode and an edit mode without opening up the source editor in a separate view. And if there's anything we need to do to help them there, that needs to get documented in an epic and an issue. If there's anything we want to do for snippets, that needs to get documented more clearly. I thought there was an epic, but I'm not finding it in the backlog. So
I'm trying to find the that proof of concept.
Yeah.
Now, and maybe it will give some.
It's around here somewhere. You know, it's probably in that epic that was called like leftover work from the transition or something like that. That didn't end up in our strategy epic. I'll keep digging.
Could be. I'm just trying to find the merge requests created by me, and I just cannot find that one.
Well, there's 7,000 of them. So
yeah. Yeah.
But that's a good point. Thanks, Chad, for pointing out. We should be more intentional about the terms we use and make it clear when we're discussing things like that. But this is all hopefully outcomes from some larger discussions on opportunities that we have over the next year or so that we can then document in that way. Yeah. But I'll take that as an action. David and I can work on it too.
Yeah. That's super. I part of my onboarding is to look at updating the editor team hand page. And so this is a good opportunity for me to learn some of the more ubiquitous language within the team, considering I am new to the team. So I'll do that as part of a table on the page, and then we can open up to the team for feedback and extension. Thanks, Chad, for that. That's a great one.
Anything else on the record before we stop recording? That as a no. Apologies to anybody else watching for continuing the discussion offline, but we have a discussion that will involve, staffing and stuff, so nobody wants to post that. All right, thanks for watching, anybody on YouTube, and hang tight, everyone else.